Goddamn, chat. This conversation might even be something that I've been meaning to talk about for quite some time that I need to retouch on. Not every fighting game needs to be AAA. Not every single fighting game that comes out from one of these big developers needs to have a giant, like, multi-year development commitment and crazy shit. Not everything needs to look like a brand new Tekken or look like a brand new Mortal Kombat or look like a brand new Devil May Cry. So what I'm trying to say is that there was a lot of fighting games that found success in the past that were essentially AA budgets. I get the big premium, right? I understand Street Fighter is Street Fighter, and it has to be the front and center. It's got to be the dude walking out all buff, and then he fucking flexes, and he does this shit, and you're like, God damn, I can see every single pore on that motherfucker's body. Like, look at that crazy shit. There needs to be a big spectacle demonstration game. Guilty Gear wasn't AAA? Oh, it definitely was, right? Just because Guilty Gear is a small team doesn't mean it's not AAA. You know why? Because no other games look better than Guilty Gear does. That Guilty Gear spends so much time on their animations that it's fucking crazy. So what I'm saying is that I think there's room for games, for fighting games, to not have to be this really crazy, reach for the moon sort of level of development, you know? And that doesn't mean a lack of quality. It doesn't. It just means that we could have a Capcom fighting game come out and have it look somewhere a bit better than a game like Ultimate Marvel 3. UMVC 3 still stands up. That game still looks good to this day, in my opinion, right? Art style will carry games a very, very long way. Games like Fighting Layer EX exist. Power Rangers is a game that exists. It's not a big, huge AAA game. And sure, do I think it could look better in some places? Absolutely. But it was able to hit on the marks that at least made it appealing. Skullgirls, for example, is also technically a AA fighting game. You might hear the fact that, oh, certain characters cost however many hundreds of thousands to make, but still, by comparison, that is still 100% like a AA style development fighting game. What I would like is that there is some developers, at least the bigger developers out there, that obviously have a lot of franchises that they can pull from to do something like that. And the nice thing is that you have so much to pull from. If there's one thing that the Souls series has taught us is that reusing and repurposing assets, also Tekken 7 has taught us, is that people don't give a shit. Smash Ultimate as well. People don't give a shit if you repurpose assets. Then people don't give a fuck. They'll just still buy it. All people care about is how many characters are in it, how many stages are in it, right? Is this fun? How many teams can I make? Like all this crazy stuff. Yeah, people just want the games to have more things, especially fighting games, right? So if you're able to pull assets from other games, like the huge pantheon of 3D Capcom, 3D/2D Capcom fighting games that have been around essentially since Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, there's a lot to pull from there, man. So that's what I personally hope. Like, I really hope that there could be a commitment from Capcom in like a versus style game that could do something like a multiversus situation. Where even in multiverses, yeah, those characters are like really well animated and stuff, and that's one thing, but they're obviously designed to work on a wide variety of platforms, right? The game is designed to look like the way it does, so that it can run on a potato. And I think you can pull off an effective, good-looking game with a good-looking art style. You know, like raw graphical fidelity isn't the thing that has to be the thing that drives games everywhere nowadays. It's really not. And sometimes I just want games to like exist, you know? Sometimes it would just be nice if this could exist and people could play it and give it a shot, and if it costs like a smaller premium, and maybe if it costs a smaller amount, then maybe. Yeah, Monster Hunter Rise. One of the best damn examples of this, like Monster Hunter Rise looks significantly worse than Monster Hunter World, and everyone still jumped in and did shit with it, and it was just repurposed assets, right? Like 90% of the game or some shit is repurposed assets of previous Monster Hunter games, with about 10% like new stuff that they sort of like new mechanics, new environments. And Rise looks bad? Yes! Yes, the Rise is a rough-looking game, man. That's the thing about Rise, is that it does a bunch of gameplay stuff and collides all that stuff because it's a Switch game, right? In ways that people have really fun with it. And guess what? I think Rise is a better game than World, regardless of how it visually looks. I think Rise is way more fun of a Monster Hunter game. I'm just using that as an example, right? Just using that as an example of It's possible to have a fighting game that comes out from these big companies that doesn't have to be a giant AAA thing, where they can maybe not go as absolute ballistic and crazy with the graphics and the visuals, instead commit to an art style that works and include as many characters as possible. That is definitely a way that has not been approached with a lot of fighting games lately, and you definitely could do something like that. Do I think they should do that with like a Darkstalkers or a Power Stone or a Project Justice? Yeah, maybe. Maybe that might be a better way of doing it. Do I think that they should just throw them all into a Capcom All-Star Versus game? Yes, I think that's way better, because it just means that you don't have to commit as much time per character into all the crazy visual accoutrements that come with a modern day visual style character, you know? That's my kind of hope going forward in the future, is that I would like other games to, fighting games to exist that aren't giant commitment games, right? Something that maybe, yeah, you know what? Shit, Killer Instinct's a great example. I hate it that it always comes back to KI. You know what? I hate it. I'm gonna say it right now. I don't like the fact that this always somehow comes back to Killer Instinct, but yes, Killer Instinct was 100% a AA fighting game from Season 1 to 2 to 3 and beyond. The entire thing was a relatively low-budget fighting game that was absolutely not given the budget of something big like a Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Probably 1/10 the fucking budget. Once you commit to an art style that works, people will sort of be willing to jump on board. I just wish there was more things kind of like Fighting EX Layer, that was like Power Rangers, that was like Killer Instinct, that aren't these insane commitment games, but if they catch on, then they can move forward, you know, and make it look better. Is KOF 15 a AA game? It's not. No, that's an expensive as fuck game. KOF 15 for what SNK is 100% a AAA game. I mean, they essentially redesigned all the character models and upgraded them significantly from the previous game, even though the previous game didn't look great, right? But every single character was significantly upgraded in a new engine, for the most part. It's a perfect example of a AAA game. It's very expensive. Newest Virtua Fighter? No. That new Virtua Fighter game, you mean Virtua Fighter Ultimate Showdown? No, that was definitely a smaller project. That project was a test. 100%. That lead producer dude that you heard from all the time, the lead producer dude with the glasses from the Virtua Fighter end, that guy specifically seemed like he just liked VF and wanted to do something with it, but didn't have a lot of money to work with, and they decided to go with a visual overhaul, right? Not nearly as expensive as a complete rehaul / like brand new design doc, you know? They stuck to the old design doc. Do I think that, yeah, a new VF should be given a relatively, like, big budget new design doc, 2022 and beyond sort of approach? Oh, goddamn, yeah. Do you think fans in FGC would accept anything less than AAA scale games? So I think it depends on how successful do you need it to be, you know? For example, Power Rangers launched with a very small roster, right? And visuals that weren't specifically great and didn't have like a ton of content, you know? But it was fun. Power Rangers went on to have how many seasons? 3, 4 seasons of characters? Roster's huge now. Like, it's massive. There's so many Power Rangers in there, I don't even know who the hell they are. Power Rangers never really managed to make a huge dent in the FGC. But clearly, they got enough money and support from their fan base. They got enough money and support from their purchasing audience that allowed them to continually add characters after characters after characters for years. That's huge. The fact that they got to go on and do that for how long? To me, that's what I care about, right? What I don't really care specifically that the game catches on in the community, specifically. I just care that enough people give a shit about this thing to continue making it. Fighting EX Layer, for God's sake, is still getting updated, and there's still new versions of the game coming out on, like, Switch and stuff that have rollback netcode and shit. There's still bullshit that's happening for those games. That's all that matters, right? To me, that's like truly what's most important, that the developers are getting paid, the people that like the games are getting new content, that new content is coming out relatively frequently, And then there you go. It's like, I think that's all you can ask for. So regardless of any of those games, like jumping in and making the big splash in what is the main stage fighting game community, I don't know if that's really important because they have their own community. They have their own dedicated fan base. There's a reason why Grand Blue Fantasy Versus is still releasing characters and shit, because enough people bought it. They have enough money and budget to warrant the further development of more stuff, even though Grand Blue, like, never specifically, like, made a splash in many ways. Maybe it will in the future, but who knows? Them's fucking Fighting Herds is just got announced that it's getting, like, crossplay and rollback netcode on, like, every system it's on or some shit. It's, like, coming out on consoles and stuff. That's huge. That's great. Is it a game that had to make a giant splash in the community? Well, maybe it didn't in the mainstream, but at least they have their audience, and their audience was able to support them enough to keep going. It's literally the exact same shit with Skullgirls, you know? Skullgirls is the pinnacle example of that, where Skullgirls never really got a chance to, like, really make a main stage sort of, like, entry into the traditional FGC. Like, it was never really given a chance, and then it does way later, you know? Where now it's like an official supported game at EVO and shit like that. Like, that's like one of the best examples, is that it was a slow burn sort of game after many years. Look at them now. What would the new rumored KI fall into, a AAA or AA space? What would I prefer? That's a great question, Karai. Would the new KI be like a big budget fighting game or like a relatively meager XBLA budget game? If it was a new KI? And I'll tell you my answer, and Microsoft has already proved what the answer is. Microsoft doesn't make AA games anymore. They don't make the XBLA smaller titles anymore, really. I can't even think of the last time that Microsoft, as far as big first-party games, have actually made like a lower budget, smaller scale game. It's been a really long time. Everything that they do. Battletoads is definitely a big game, man. I don't know about you. Cuphead? I don't know about you guys of how expensive you think those games are to make. But I would argue that Battletoads cost more to make than multiple seasons of Killer Instinct. I think that actually cost more than potentially, like, the large majority of what KI costs to even make. Somebody said, like, Ori and the Blind Forest. You have to remember, games like Cuphead and Ori, Microsoft stepped in, and those games were like indie games, but Microsoft stepped in and gave them a ton of fucking money to turn those into big games. So they started off as small games, but then they got turned into huge games. People don't remember that Ori was delayed a hell of a long time. Ori 2 was delayed a hell of a long time, and Cuphead was delayed an insane amount of time to get those games to actually come out of the quality they did. Just because a game's 2D does not mean it's a low-budget game. In fact, if a game is 2D, it sometimes means that it's very expensive. The single A, double A, triple A thing mostly comes down to budget, right? Mostly comes down to how much money are they willing to spend on this, you know? Are they spending like a small amount of money, like a mobile title, or like a median game, like a lower effort mobile title? Like, for example, like the Capcom fucking Puzzle Fighter game, right? Remember that Puzzle Fighter thing? Comes down to how many devs are involved. Comes down to like a lot of different things, right? How much marketing money is being spent on it, type shit. Yeah, it depends on how much effort is essentially being put into the game. Is Project L a big budget game? Yes. Yes. It is. Jesus Christ. Project L has been in development for like 6 years. Has probably turned from one game to another, to another, to another, like 4 times in its development cycle of them trying to figure out what it is, and that isn't cheap. That arguably, those moments cost the most money of like prototyping and getting things to like even an alpha state and stuff like that, and then potentially restarting. Project L probably has a bigger budget than the majority of fighting games that are out there. Just because it can run on a potato doesn't mean that that is specifically a resolution of cheapness, you know? But definitely putting a lot of money into that game.